The chamber of gravity. The alien council ship hovered in low orbit above the neutral station of Kelvara. Inside its polished silver hull, the command room pulsed with nervous energy. Screens showed data, images of humans in training, and a large, gravity chamber in the center of the station. Commander Telric tapped his long fingers on the console. He turned to his second-in-command. "Begin the trial," he said coldly. The gravity trial was once a joke, a ceremony used by the Galactic elite to mock weak species. But that changed after humans survived it, more than once. Now, it was law. No species could laugh at humans unless they first passed the gravity trial, and no one had since humans took the test. The council gathered, watching from the gallery above. Lights dimmed. The chamber glowed. From the far end of the hallway, a single human walked forward. His name was Leo. He wore a simple training suit. No armor, no weapons. Just a calm face and steady breath. The floor shifted. The trial had started. Alien. Officers checked readings on screens. Gravity at 2x, one whispered. Human is stable. Leo took another step. His foot landed firm. No shake, no stumble. 3x gravity, still walking. 4x. Heart rate rising, but within range. Telric frowned. Increase faster. A quiet voice spoke from the back. Sir, the others didn't last past 3x. Humans aren't like the others, Telric said. This is their own standard. They made it through once. They must do it again. Inside the chamber, Leo's arms began to tremble. His breathing got louder, but he kept walking. The room was silent. A heavy thud echoed. Leo had dropped to one knee. 6 gravity, the officer said. Still conscious. Another step, forward, then another. The walls of the chamber groaned. Machines had to compensate for the increasing pull. Leo's face was pale now, veins visible, eyes burning. But he did not fall. The chamber tilted. Artificial gravity tried to crush him from multiple directions, a standard test for strength, balance, and survival instinct. Still moving. The officer reported, now almost whispering. Council members began murmuring. Why do they keep doing this? They could refuse the test. They never do. Inside the trial room, Leo clenched his fists and shouted, not in pain, but in defiance. The force dropped suddenly, back to normal gravity. A soft alarm rang. Trial complete. Leo stood still, chest heaving, sweat dripping. But he did not fall. He looked straight at the council chamber, raised one hand, and gave a small wave. Not a salute, not a challenge, just a wave. Friendly. Calm. Telric felt something stir in his chest. Not fear, not respect, something else. He turned to his second. Log the result. Yes, sir, and send the reminder. Which one? The rule. No race may mock humanity without surviving what they call normal. The second-in-command paused, then nodded. Yes, Commander, I'll send it. As the council filed out in silence, Leo sat on a bench inside the chamber. Breathing returned to normal. A medic approached, scanning him. You didn't need to push that hard, she said gently. Leo smiled. Yes, I did. They were watching. She looked toward the empty gallery. You think they'll stop mocking us now? Leo shook his head. No. But they'll hesitate first. And that was enough. The council's unease back in the council chamber. The mood had changed. What was once laughter and arrogance was now silence and side glances. The trial had always been a formality, a joke, something to prove a species had the right to mock the so-called primitive humans. But now, with each human that passed, the joke seemed to turn back on them. Commander Telric sat in his high chair, staring at the footage of Leo's trial, replaying on a loop. Slow it down, he ordered. The technician obeyed. Frame by frame, Leo's steps were analyzed. Muscle strain, oxygen intake, micro movements of balance correction. Every piece of him controlled, calculated, like he'd done this 100 times before. And maybe he had. "Commander," said a voice behind him. It was Counselor Varn, an old rival and sometimes ally. "How many is that now?" 8. Confirmed trials passed. 3 survived higher than standard conditions. All human. No other species? None. Varn crossed his arms. "So now it's a ritual? A tradition before we even speak of them?" Telric nodded slowly. "It's no longer about permission to mock. It's about warning ourselves." He pressed a button, opening a new report. Incident on Draylen 6. A mining colony. 5 humans were trapped during a gravity surge. Locals assumed they were lost. They survived? They walked out 2 days later, carried the alien workers on their backs. Varn said nothing. Telric continued. "Do you remember when we first called humans amusing? When they slipped and fell in low grav zones? When we laughed as their bones cracked in high-pressure atmospheres?" "Yes," Varn replied. "We thought they were soft," Telric said. "Turns out they were still adapting, learning, and now..." He paused as the screen flickered. Leo's trial again, his knees shaking under 7x gravity and still pushing forward. "Now we test gravity to remind ourselves not to underestimate them." Down below, in the station's rest quarters, Leo sat with the other humans. 6 of them. Men and women. No ranks, no fancy uniforms. Just worn suits, tired eyes, and shared silence. "Why do they keep making us do it?" asked a young man. Leo didn't look up. "Because they can't understand us, and they fear what they don't understand." "But it's not fair," the young man replied. "We're not even soldiers. We're just engineers and scouts." An older woman leaned back. "That's exactly why it works. We're not soldiers. But we survive like them. That's what scares them." The group fell quiet. In another part of the station, a group of alien recruits reviewed the trial footage. Some were curious, some were angry, others afraid. One recruit whispered, "Why do humans keep agreeing to the trial?" Another replied, "They want to show us they're ready, for anything." The instructor shook his head. "No, they want to show us something worse." "What?" "They want to show us they're used to it." Meanwhile, Telric stood alone in front of the trial chamber's observation glass. He stared at the floor where Leo had nearly collapsed, then stood again. He spoke softly to no one. "One day someone's going to ask why this ritual started, and I'll have to answer honestly." He clenched his fists behind his back. "Because we mocked them, and they made us regret it, without ever firing a weapon." A challenge ignites. The following cycle, a message went out across the sector. Open. Gravity trials for all species wishing to mock or rank above humanity. Hosted by Council Command. Location, Kelvara Station Standard Gravity. Threshold 6x. Honor Challenge, 7x. The announcement caused a stir. From proud warrior clans to elite science races, many believed they could pass what humans had passed. After all, how hard could it be? Applications flooded in. The first challenger was from the Kirovax. Tall, four-armed, and bred for battlefield gravity conditions. Their soldier, a decorated veteran, entered the chamber with confidence and 6 observers. He lasted 20 seconds at 4.5x. Next came a cyborg-enhanced Selenid, wrapped in high-pressure armor and assisted by balanced servos. The machines jammed at 5.2 keks. He blacked out. Had to be revived. One by one, the challengers failed, some with screams, some in silence. Others cursed the trial as biased or impossible, but none passed. Each failed attempt pushed the legend further. Aliens had always thought humans were weak, relying on tools and emotion. But now those same traits were being seen differently. Tools became adaptations. Emotion became will. Back in the human quarters, Leo and his group watched. The results on a small screen. "They just don't get it," said the young man again. Leo nodded. "They think it's about muscle. It's not." "What is it about then?" Leo looked away, thoughtful. pain, endurance, grit. Humans don't move forward because it's easy. They move forward even when it's unbearable. He stood up, slowly, his body still sore from his own trial. This isn't a test of gravity, it's a test of will. Elsewhere, Councillor Varn stood in a private hall facing his people. "I want one of ours to pass," he said. "Not for honor, not to mock humans again, but to understand." His aides hesitated. "You want one of us to attempt it?" "Yes. We've measured humans from the outside too long. It's time to know what they go through, from the inside." He turned toward the trial footage once more. "I fear what they are becoming," he admitted. "But I fear even more what they already are." Back in the trial chamber, new support beams were being installed. The machinery had to be reinforced. The technician asked the human mechanic, "Why do we need this?" "Isn't the gravity field enough?" the human replied, tightening bolts. "It used to be." "But what changed?" The human paused. "You started copying us." The technician blinked, confused. The human smirked. "Which means we'll have to go further next time." Later that day, as stars burned outside the observation windows, the station AI recorded an unusual entry in its cultural logs. Entry number 982, Ritual Update. The gravity trial is no longer a test of superiority. It is now a quiet agreement between those who still laugh and those who remember pain. A warning carried on strained muscles and clenched jaws. A story told without a word. Humanity does not brag. It survives. And survival, it seems, cannot be mocked. The volunteer. 2 days after the latest round of failed trials, Councillor Varn submitted a name. A volunteer. Not a warrior. Not a scientist. A translator named Mira. She was not chosen for strength. She was chosen because she had spent 3 years with humans, learned their language, ate their food, laughed at their strange humor, listened to their songs, and most of all, she watched them survive where others would have surrendered. The council was confused. Many objected. "She is small," one elder said. "She is not trained," another warned. But Varn stood firm. "She is the only one among us who understands them, not through study, but through presence. If any of us will pass the trial, it will be her." Mira stood outside the gravity chamber, her hands trembling slightly. Her slim frame was wrapped in a reinforced pressure suit. Nothing fancy, just enough to monitor her vitals and keep her breathing steady. She looked through the window at the steel floor. It looked heavy. Leo arrived, just before the test began. He had heard whispers of a volunteer from the council. When he saw her, he was surprised. "You?" he said, not mocking, just surprised. Mira nodded. "I've seen what it means to you. I want to understand." Leo gave her a small nod. "Then don't try to be strong. Just be honest. The gravity doesn't care if you're brave. It only cares if you stop." The door sealed behind her. Trial start. Gravity 2x. Mira took her first step. It was heavier than she expected. Her body felt like it was wrapped in stone. Her joints screamed, but she kept moving. Tracks. She leaned forward, hands slightly out for balance. The council watched from the upper deck. Leo leaned forward too, whispering to himself, "Bend your knees. Shorter steps." Mira gritted her teeth. The world pressed down. Her eyes blurred. Her back screamed. Her legs trembled. A few observers turned away. One muttered, "She'll fall." But she didn't. She kept going. Fex. A soft gasp rippled through the council. Mira's steps slowed, but her eyes were locked on the door at the far end. Her breath came in short bursts. Heart rate rising. "At limit," a technician said. "We should stop." "No," Varn whispered. "Let her choose." Inside the chamber, Mira's foot dragged. She almost stumbled. Her fingers twitched as the pressure tried to fold her in half. But then, she laughed. Just once. A memory flashed through her mind. Humans joking during storms, singing while bleeding, carrying each other through the mud. It made no sense. but it gave her strength. 6. The alarm beeped. Threshold reached. Mira collapsed to her knees, but didn't fall on her face. She clenched the floor with her hands. Her shoulders quaked. "Should we end it?" the technician asked. "Wait," Varn said. Leo watched closely. "Don't give up," he whispered, and Mira crawled forward, one arm, then the next. The crowd was silent, not even breathing. The chamber's AI chirped, "Trial complete," the gravity cut. Normal conditions restored. Mira collapsed flat on her back, arms spread wide, smiling despite the pain. In the council room, the silence was complete. "She made it," someone whispered. "A non-human passed. But she lived with them," another said. "She became like them." Varn stood. "Then the question is no longer what are humans becoming? It is, what happens when others start becoming like them?" Leo stood over Mira as medics rushed in. "You did it," he said. She looked up, still half-conscious. "I wanted to know." Leo knelt. "Now you do." Echoes across the stars. News of Mira's success spread fast, faster than any council announcement in recent memory. Non-human passes gravity trial. Translator of humanity crosses the line. What are humans teaching us? Entire planets tuned in to watch the replay. Some saw it as an achievement. Others saw it as a warning. A few, especially among the military orders, saw it as a challenge. On a cold mining world, a hardened warrior scoffed. "She crawled, that's not passing." On a lush trade hub, a scientist argued, "It's not about strength, it's about mindset." But on every world, one thing became clear. The trial was no longer just humanity's burden. It was now a mirror for the galaxy. A test not just of muscle, but of endurance, spirit, and something that could not be engineered. At Kelvara Station, Mira recovered slowly. Her muscles ached, her bones were sore, but her eyes were bright. Leo visited her again. He sat at the edge of her bed, silent for a while. Finally, she broke the quiet. "They'll come now," she said. "Who?" Leo asked. "Others, curious ones, brave ones, the angry ones too." Leo nodded. "Maybe they should." Mira looked over. "Do you want them to understand humanity?" Leo shrugged. "I don't care if they understand us. I want them to respect us." "Is that the same thing?" He smiled. "Not at all, but it's a start." Councillor Varn stood before the chamber again, this time with full delegates from across 7 systems present. The gravity trial had become more than ritual. It had become a rite of respect. He spoke to the crowd. "We once created this trial to measure humanity, to laugh at their struggle. We thought pain was a weakness, that endurance meant desperation." He looked directly at a group of younger alien cadets. "But humans taught us that pain reveals truth, that suffering uncovers strength, that gravity does not care for pride, it only cares whether you rise." He turned to the chamber floor. "From this point forward, the trial will not be used to mock. It will be used to remember." Elsewhere, on a small human freighter passing through a quiet sector, an alien envoy requested passage. The captain, a lean woman with scars across her knuckles, raised an eyebrow at the request. "You want to travel with us?" The envoy nodded. "I want to learn." The captain chuckled. "Then you'd better hang on tight. Humans don't walk easy roads." "I've noticed," the envoy replied. Back in her room, Mira wrote a message, one she would send to all translation, academies across the outer colonies. "I passed their trial, but not with power, with memory. I remembered the humans I laughed with, the ones who stitched wounds with shaky hands, who kept going when they should have stopped. I remember how they treat pain like wind. Hard, yes, but never enough to stop the journey. If you wish to understand humans, do not study their ships. Walk with them. Watch how they carry burdens, even when no one's watching." From that day on, the gravity trial became more than a test. It became a question whispered by every species, on every ship. Could I do what a human does? The unseen war weeks passed. More volunteers arrived at Kelvara Station. Soldiers, scholars, workers, beings from dozens of species lined up for the gravity trial, not to mock, not to prove dominance, but to understand what it meant to stand where humans had stood. Some made it past 3x, fewer crossed 5x. Only one, Mira, still held the record for completing the 6x threshold. But something was changing. Whispers grew louder among the council. Not everyone was pleased with humanity's quiet influence. Some feared it, some resented it. At a private gathering on a high-orbit station, a general from the Orvax system slammed his claw on the table. "We are warriors. Our people have conquered moons, crushed rebellions, shattered fleets. And yet the galaxy now kneels. To a race that crawls through gravity fields like animals?" An older strategist responded calmly. "That animal has never asked for loyalty. They simply endure. And now others follow them, not by force, but by choice." The general growled. "Then we must break that choice." Back at Kelvara, Leo felt the shift in the air. Fewer smiles, more silent stares, officers whispering when humans passed. Some ships no longer responded to hails from Earth vessels. Gravity trial footage was suddenly pulled from certain info feeds. Mira noticed too. "You think someone's planning something?" she asked him one evening. Leo looked up from his data pad. "They don't need weapons. They just need to make others forget. Replace respect with silence. They won't succeed." Leo didn't respond. Instead, he tapped his screen and opened a secure log. Report. Sabotage detected. Gravity chamber calibration interference logged. He turned the screen. Toward Mira. Someone tampered with the trial field. Tried to increase the pull past safety. Mira's eyes widened. "Was anyone hurt?" "No," Leo said. "Because we double-check. Because we know they'd try." Counselor Varn confronted the technician responsible. "You risked lives," Varn growled. "Why?" The technician didn't answer right away. Then with a cold voice, "Because humans are changing us, and not everyone wants to be changed." Varn stared hard. "Then you should not have come here." The technician was removed, but the damage had already begun. Trust was cracking. Leo gathered the human crew that night. Not just his team, but new arrivals. Pilots, miners, even doctors. He stood in the station's observation deck looking out at the nebula beyond. "They're trying to erase what we've done," he said. "Not by attacking, but by making others afraid to follow." Pilot asked, "What do we do?" Leo looked back at them. "We survive." He pointed to the training boards. "We pass the trials, again and again. Not for them, for us. For everyone who ever watched a human stand back up when they shouldn't have." Mira stepped beside him. "And if we fall?" Leo's voice dropped, low. "Then we fall forward." The next day, Leo walked into the chamber again. No invitation, no announcement, no crowd, just him and gravity. Trial initiated. X, step. 3x, step. 4x. His knees bent, his spine bowed, sweat poured. E. Muscles screamed. Sig. His body trembled, but he walked. He didn't stop. Alarms blinked. Engineers yelled. Counselor Varn ran to the window. Leo didn't hear them. He was already past the edge, past the safety line. Into the zone no one else dared enter. He moved with pain. He moved with memory. He moved for every human who had ever been mocked, and every alien who had ever believed in them. He collapsed just as he touched the far wall. Silence. Then the AI's voice. Trial complete. Unofficial record, 7x gravity, subject conscious, standing, confirmed. Leo's hand twitched, and then he raised it. Not as a challenge, not in anger. Just a calm, steady wave, again. The ritual becomes legacy. The station was never the same after that day. Word of Leo's 7x gravity walk exploded across systems. The footage was leaked, first by a technician, then spread by supporters who refused to let it be buried. Millions watched as Leo staggered under impossible pressure. No weapons, no armor, no command. Just a man walking, bleeding, shaking, but still walking. And when he raised that single hand at the end, something in the galaxy shifted. It wasn't fear. It wasn't awe. It was respect. At the council hall, the debates were over. Varn stood before leaders from 100 species. "We created this ritual to laugh," he said. "Now it teaches." A few still grumbled. Others looked ashamed, but no one interrupted. Varn continued. "From this moment forward, the gravity trial is no longer a test to prove superiority. It is a rite of passage to understand resilience. Any who pass it, regardless of species, carry the same truth: to endure when everything says stop." He paused. "And let it be recorded, humans taught us that truth." Outside, ships lined the docking rings of Kelvara Station. No longer just council patrols, freighters, medical vessels, research cruisers, independent travelers. They came not to challenge the humans. They came to train with them. Inside the recovery bay, Leo lay in bed, eyes closed, body still. Mira sat, nearby holding a datapad. When he stirred, she smiled. "You did it," she said softly. Leo gave a faint grin. "Didn't do it for me." She nodded. "I know." She held out the datapad. "Look." He blinked, squinting at the screen. It showed a message feed, thousands of names, volunteers from across the galaxy, all registering for the next trial, some with no history of strength, some without any pride to prove, just a simple reason listed beside their names. "I want to walk like a human." 3 cycles later, a young alien girl entered the chamber. She was small, born on a low-gravity moon, never trained for war, but she had watched the recordings again and again. She stepped into the trial with no audience, no fanfare, and she walked. Her bones cracked, her vision blurred. But she didn't stop. At 6x gravity, she touched the far wall, collapsed, and raised her hand. In the halls of command, a new plaque was mounted beside the chamber entrance. "Let no one mock until they have carried the weight. Let no one lead until they have walked under pressure. Let all remember, humanity did not teach us to fight. They taught us to stand." The end.